Hi, this is Jason Huval, broker for Central Metro Realty, and today I'm going to talk about the seller's temporary residential lease form. This is a pretty simple form. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but just some real quick highlights of the good, the bad, the ugly. First and foremost, typically on a 1 to 4 contract or even on a condo contract, there's a section that I think I have one here. Talks about possession of the property. I just wanted to hit that real quick because you can check upon closing and funding or according to a temporary residential lease. And so that's what we've got here is a temporary lease. And this is something I like to use when I'm on the list side of a deal. I always like to use a lease back to give my seller some time to get out of the property. Usually there's kind of a rush to get, we got to get closing. They have their stuff packed up and they got to get out of the house. If they have a couple days, it's good for, really good for the seller. Give them time to get out of the property, but it's good for the buyer too. That way the seller can move out and, clean up behind themselves and kind of, it's a win-win for everybody. And I usually shoot for anything from a few days to maybe like a week after closing to give the seller some time to get out of the property. But there's another, dozens of reasons that you could use this form to have the seller stay in the property for, maybe they were building another house. They have to sell this one and, they can't move for another month or so. But anyway, the highlights here, this form can be used for up to 90 days after closing. This is not a solution for somebody you're going to lease the home back for a year or so. You should go ahead and just write up a regular a lease with them. So this is a temporary. And then also you have some lenders that have standards. I believe even like, I don't know what today's standards are with Fannie and Freddie. It used to be like 60 days is the most time for the time given for a buyer to move into a home. And again, I'm not sure exactly what it is. I guess I should have looked that up, but you can't go too long. I mean, if you're buying a home as a primary residence, the lender wants to see that you're moving in the home as your primary residence. So anyways, let's get right to it here. The parties, it's relatively straightforward there. The lease, again, that's pretty straightforward. The term is the only thing I'll say here about this little bit. A good trick that you can use. Sometimes close dates move around. We don't always close on time or when we want. And so if we put a firm date in here, so this says section 3 term, the term of this lease commences on the date the sale covered by the contract is closed and funded and terminates X. And so let's say you want to do a 1 week lease back. Well, closing gets pushed a week. Well, our date in here, if we were supposed to close July 1st and we end up closing July 7th, and I have July 7th in here as an end date, then that's a problem. And so what you can do is just use the number of days, is closed and funded and terminates however many days after closing or whatever, 7 days after, 30 days after closing, whatever. It's just an easier thing to do. You can do either way, but that's what I like to do is it's just simpler. And then the rental is a per day amount. Everybody, often agents ask me, what's a fair amount? A lot of people use PITI. That's, like whatever the mortgage amount would be for the new buyer as a guide. And it depends really on your market, on which side of the equation you're on here. Currently at the time of this video, this is a very hot market in Central Texas. And so sellers are just getting free lease backs, oftentimes for several weeks if they need it. And so, this dollar amount really it's a negotiated item, just like everything else in the contract. I would say customary, what had been in the past would be whatever the cost of holding the property for the buyer, who is the new landlord at this point, whatever their holding cost per day. That's usually a good measure. Deposit here, this is to protect that buyer on the home, right? So if the seller damages the property and getting out of there, anything they may have that same risk you run whenever you purchase a property, but you usually do a walkthrough. In this case, a buyer may want to see a seller put up some money, some deposit funds. A typical deposit, again, this is a negotiated item. It really depends on the purchase price of the home, the size of the home. But especially as a buyer agent, I want to see some money there. When I'm on the seller side of a transaction, I don't like seeing money there. I don't want to have to worry about trying to get money out of a buyer for a home. They just paid me a whole bunch of money. They might, be a little more, have a little more sticky fingers, or it might take a little longer to get the cash back. So again, it depends on which side you're on, and keep in mind these are all negotiated items. Utilities, again, that's a negotiated item. I usually probably an NA there, not applicable. And then pets, the same thing. Mine often says here with, tenants accept, pets except the pets currently on property, something to that effect. Special provisions and don't need to go. I'm not going to cover really the term of this lease. I think everything's pretty straightforward. We'll talk about holdover here. This is whenever a seller's not getting out of the property. This needs to be a big number, more than a stay at the Ritz downtown, at least a few $100, $300-$400, some number that encourages. If I'm a buyer agent filling this out, I want to see a big number and holdover because I want to be able to hold that out of that deposit that we have up there or whatever other legal recourse, but I need to get them out of this house and have a nice dollar amount here for that. But that's this form in a nutshell. I know it's kind of a quick once over. It's a pretty simple, straightforward form. As always, you can call or email me anytime. This is Jason Huval, broker and owner of Central Metro Realty. Thanks so much for watching.